Hello again. I'm Wally Wood, and we welcome you to this edition of the Revelation File. Going forward, we have been talking about my library, a library of New World information in the form of books, media, magazines, VIP statements, things of this nature. And this has come because a number of you have been writing in asking how long I've been in this type of ministry, wanting to better understand what this ministry is all about and the resources that we use. And being one that has been reared in the news media since the 60s, I've taken very seriously in the building of my library. And I take very seriously the credibility of this ministry because I'm not one to stand on a soapbox. I'm not an activist or an advocate. I'm a reporter. And this is what the Lord assigned to me way back in my younger years. And so moving forward in this, I've developed quite a library of information that address the course of the world moving into the prophesied last days before Jesus returns. Part of that centers around the administration of the Antichrist. How is he going to rule the world? How is he going to be worshipped as a god, as the Bible predicts? What are the practical, real-world elements of something that has been prophesied for over 2,000 years? And people tend not to take seriously that which is Bible. It's religious. They do take seriously news and information. So that's what this ministry has been about since the late 60s and early 70s. And for the past two programs, if you've not been able to be with us previously, I've shown you the books, samples of books in my library that address this new world, one world development that is paving the way where they're reaching out to this one man eventually. Last time we introduced you to some of the magazines, and we'll be doing that today as well. Going forward in today's program, again, it is our custom to bring forth our disclaimer showing that we are within the realm of the copyright law, the good standing and fair use doctrine of copyright that enables us to use certain copyrighted material, whether it be video or literary, in a teaching, information, education format. And that's what we are. So, with that, let me introduce you to our magazine library. Again, this is only a segment of the magazines that I've collected over the years, and journals as well. Of interest is the National Geographic magazine at the very top left, The Next Human. In Bible prophecy, Revelation 13, it talks about something known as the image of the beast. And we have already produced a program or two on this, artificial intelligence, and how there's coming a day when this world leader, this Antichrist, is going to be replaced for his safety and security reasons by a lookalike. The Bible tells us in Revelation 13 that they worship the beast, the Antichrist. They worship the image of the beast. Well, people don't change their gods that quickly, especially in modern society, unless they've been deceived. And we're convinced that there's coming an artificial intelligence equivalent to the real person himself, known as the image of the beast. So this particular issue of National Geographic is of interest because it shows the next human. They address us technologically taking over our own evolution as people, as humans on Earth. Very, very interesting. Newsweek magazine, We Are All Socialists Now. That came out a number of years ago, not recently. News Scientist, again, talking about robotics, humanoids, artificial intelligence, better than human. Bloomberg addressed the matter of total surveillance, what's known as omnivalence. It's not spying if they're always watching. And now with there being cameras everywhere, this term that was established by a law firm, a law college here in Houston several years ago, is omnivalence. And it's given divine attribute characteristics of the fact that there's nowhere you can go that you can hide, no matter where. And so that's something that Bloomberg Businessweek addressed as well. And coming across the line again, privacy, the absence, the total abolition of privacy in this totally visible world technologically, that there's no privacy anymore. The Economist magazine, get ready for a world currency. They're calling it the Phoenix. Now this came out in the 1980s, and even then there was the talk of creating the need or having the need of creating a single global currency for this new world that we're going into. National Geographic, Big Brother, addressing the concept of a totally transparent world of ours. Next to that is Foreign Policy Journal. Would fewer currencies make more sense? And again, a single global currency. World Policy Journal, Beyond Borders. And that's what we addressed in the book segment of our show, was this concept that the nation-state era is coming to an end and is to be replaced by a single global government. So World Policy Journal addresses what's next beyond the nation-state. Can machines think? Time magazine, going back to artificial intelligence and humanoids. Time magazine next to that, never offline. The smartwatch is what they're addressing. In the year when the smartwatch hit the public, this particular issue addressed the risks, the challenges of wearing a watch that is always online, it's never offline, and what is information and data is gathered from those who wear a smartwatch. Wired magazine, money wants to be free. Speaking of the digitization, cryptocurrency, the idea that our money is moving in the direction of a cashless, all electronic society. Money wants to be free. Likewise, the new economy, again, speaking in terms of the coming digitization of currency. The End of Code by Wired magazine addressed the idea that we are now entering into a new era, a new phase of artificial intelligence and robotics, where there's the diminishing need for human interaction in the world of artificial intelligence. That the systems are becoming so smart now, they can correct themselves, they can change their own code, they can rewrite their own code without human intervention. The coming era of the end of code, with human intervention and interaction with the machinery that we've created, is getting that smart. Image of the beast technology. What I want to bring to your attention here, again, going back to Revelation 13, we're all familiar with the mark of the beast being implanted in the right hand or the forehead. But if you read that particular passage, it's the image of the beast that sends forth that command. It's not the beast himself. It's not the Antichrist. It's his image that sends forth the command to receive the mark. And those who do not worship the image of the beast would be killed. So this is a level of artificial intelligence that is very deceptive and rises above human involvement to the point where now what humans have created, the way of smart machinery, now rules the human being. And that is what Revelation 13 talks about. So Wired magazine addresses that. So these are just small samples of the library that I have in the area of magazines that are addressing this new world from every kind of perspective that you can think of. Going forward, CNBC recently announced that why China's rise may call for a new world order. And again, I'm bringing to the forefront the fact that everybody is talking about this. I don't use that term loosely. Hear it bantered around everywhere. Everybody's talking about this, everybody's talking about that. Well, I can tell you that everybody is talking about this new world order across all spectrum. Why China's rise may call for a new world order. Quoting from CNBC, the international community needs to reestablish a world order based on the rules as the rise of China coincides with the decline in European and American power, according to business and politics experts. Another report, the National Catholic Reporter, came out April 20th of 2020, announcing that now is the time to build a new world without inequality or injustice, the Pope says. On this matter of the Pope calling for a new world order, several sources, and this goes back not just to the current Pope, but 2 or 3 popes before him, how in modern times, every Pope that we've had has called for a new world order. The Mail Foreign Service, which was picked up by Reuters, announced that the Pope's plea for a new world order. The Guardian, in this year, 2020, Pope calls for a new world order. The Sydney Morning Herald, on July 9th of 2009, announced that the Pope calls for a new world order. So that was Pope Benedict. So there's this concentrated, focused effort in getting the news out there to convince the world that a new world order is needed. CNBC again announced on April 2nd of 2020, Putin seeking to create new world order with rogue states amid coronavirus crisis, report claims. This pandemic that's hit the world has brought out in front what used to be spoken of in shadows. And now there's a global commitment to deal with this pandemic on a global basis, even if it means overriding national sovereignties, all for the interest and the concern for the welfare of the global population. The American Enterprise Institute, it's time for a new world order, they said on April 15th, 2020. The American Enterprise Institute, quoting, much of the global infrastructure built in the wake of World War II, think the United Nations, NATO, the World Bank, and the European Union, is aged, sclerotic, meaning rigid or unresponsive. They're corrupt and incapable of addressing the challenges of the 21st century. The COVID-19 pandemic should be an inflection point for the world, a wake-up call to revisit and reform that infrastructure for the 21st century. The status quo is unsustainable. It will help to gather a group of like-minded states, such as the UK, Australia, and others, who see the problem the same way. So again, this general call for world leaders now to consider coming together and forming a new environment for the world. Time magazine, as far back as July 1st, 1974, in a guest editorial, the United Nations was called upon by the Time magazine to, quote, seriously consider establishing a new political office to tackle the problems of the world at large, president of planet Earth, end of quote. How's that grab you? There's talk for the need for a single world leader. Who's he going to be? How do we find him? And when the governments of the world come together, their annual conclaves, that becomes one of the issues that they talk about. Because individual nations, individual leaders, their hands are tied. And the world is slipping away to chaos, tyranny, everywhere. Not just the United States, but everywhere. And we've quoted sources that address that. Time magazine, 1974, addressing the matter. Let's have a president of planet Earth to solve our global problems. Bloomberg, a new world order for the coronavirus era is emerging. And this came out in July 9, 2020. The next 6 months will go a long way to determining what the geopolitical map will look like at a time of intensifying rivalry. Quoting, as visitors in face masks ponder the consequences of post-World War II decisions at a new exhibition to mark the 75th anniversary of the conference, the geopolitical map of the world is again being redrawn. This time, it's a result of the coronavirus, which German Chancellor Angela Merkel has described as the biggest challenge of the post-war era. Quoting further, halfway into a year dominated by the pandemic, governments are confronting a health crisis, an economic crisis, and a crisis of institutional legitimacy, all at a time of heightening geopolitical rivalry. How those tectonic shifts crystallize over the next 6 months will go a long way to determining the post-virus era. That's according to Bloomberg. Another source, MarketWatch. Bank of America on the New World Order. Bigger governments, tech wars, less privacy, and health the new wealth. This came out May 15, 2020. Quoting, Bank of America has released its view of what the world will look like after the COVID-19 upheaval. We expect this pandemic to accelerate many macro trends that would have taken 5 or more years to play out before, from peak globalization to renewed tech wars and a reappraisal of healthcare systems and government influence, it says. So see, everybody's planning on what happens after COVID, if indeed COVID era and pandemic comes to an end. Nobody knows for sure at this point. Even with the vaccine, nobody knows how that's going to impact what COVID has started. But it sure is directing the thinking processes of world leaders to reach beyond the status quo and come up with a solution that will be for the benefit and the welfare of the world's population. Quoting Henry Kissinger on July 18, 1993, he says, what Congress will have before it is not a conventional trade agreement, but the architecture of a new international system, a first step toward a new world order. And he was quoting the LA Times, July 18, 1993. And attributed to that is Strobe Talbot, quoting in Time magazine of July 20th, 1992. He says, in the next century, speaking of this one, nations as we know it will be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority. National sovereignty wasn't such a great idea after all. End of quote. And he served under President Bill Clinton as United States Deputy Secretary of State. So his opinions carry weight. The next century, speaking of the one we're in right now, nations as we know it will be obsolete. I'm bringing all this up for the sake, the sanity, and the sanctity of believers. In these shaking times, we were told to expect them. So I'm wanting to address the shakiness of today's believers. Jesus said, when you see these things, do not let your heart be troubled, neither be dismayed. These things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. This is just the beginning of sorrows. I'm wanting to put a face of believability on what's going on, knowing that this is part of the end time package. We should be more stabilized and excited by the fact that these are the things that were to occur before Jesus came back. And that's where my joy is. I may not show it on the camera a lot, but I am absolutely overwhelmed by the fact that God chose for me to be born at such a time as this, in this last generation, the generation that would see with its eye the splitting of that eastern sky. Jesus said in Matthew 24, the generation that sees these very things would not pass away, would not cease to exist till everything had been fulfilled, which included his return. Returning to the closing segments of my presentation here, James Paul Warburg is on record as having said, "We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent." And he was part of the Warburg banking dynasty, his day back in the 50s. So the plans were already underway. The blueprint was already being written for a one world system. Daniel 2, verses 42 through 43 sets the stage. And the Message Bible reads, "The kingdom that is coming will be as a mixture of ceramic and iron, and will deteriorate into a mongrel kingdom with some remains of iron in it. It will end up a mixed bag of the breakable and the unbreakable. That kingdom won't bond, won't hold together any more than iron and clay hold together." So in the midst of all these preparations, all the good intentions of the leaders and the bad intentions of the conspirators, the Bible predicts that first, this kingdom is coming, and secondly, it won't adhere. It won't become a solid empirical kingdom that is under control. And the Bible gives reasons why that won't be, which will add further to the call and the need for the Antichrist. A man who will come forward, the Bible says he will have a stout face, meaning that he will have a controllable personality. He will be a man who appears to be under strong self-control, a disciplined man, a man of knowledge, a man who's got answers. And he'll be able to provide soluble answers for every problem that's brought to his attention of those who are surrounding him and coming to him. But in a modern term, he'll be a man's man, rock solid, stable, mature. He won't come across as a politician. He will come across as a man of answers. And that's why even the kingdom that's coming, the empire that's being built, the New World Order, is going to be shaky at its best, because unstable individuals, personalities, will be trying to operate it, but they won't have any blueprint to follow. So this man of answers will come forth at just the right nick of time. On this slide, again, I take you back to Daniel chapter 2. I've shared this with you many times before. That is the premise, the foundation in which the scriptures address what's coming in the last days. In this particular story, recorded in Daniel 2, the prophet reveals to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the course of world history from his point going forward into our day. And what all the evidence I've been showing to you points to the culmination of that kingdom time that's been spoken about and predicted. Growing global unrest and tremor. Those are the days we're living in now. Ours is a world full of trauma, fear, anxiety, uncertainty, instability. The pressures of extremism are everywhere, from the oceans to the skies to the streets. What's going on? Why? What does it all mean? In Luke 21, verses 25 through 26, Jesus says, "And there will be signs upon the earth, dismay among the nations with perplexity, men's hearts failing them for fear, and the expectation of things which are coming upon the world. For the very powers of the heavens will be shaken." So, our challenge is not to be shaken with the shaking. We are the light of the world. Jesus said, "It's been given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom." This entire program, this entire channel that we've put together has been oriented to not just news reporting and prophetic reporting, but also teaching the body of Christ how to become disciplined, how to become knowledgeable, how to become aware. Jesus said more than once, stay on the alert. Don't let these times catch you by surprise. Stay on the alert. Because around you, the world is going to be shaking. And they're looking for stability somewhere. If they don't find it in Jesus Christ, they'll find it in the Antichrist. We're the ones who stand in the gap, point them to the very real God who created all things. In our closing slide for today's program, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to you what will take place in the latter days. That's Daniel 2, verse 28. Daniel 2, verse 44. In the days of this kingdom, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. That's the joy of the saint. We encourage each other with the reality of the fact that we are the generation that will see the return of Jesus Christ. And I'll say it again, until that trumpet blows, your feet are stuck here. So make the most of it. Ephesians tells us that we are to become mature men in the Lord to the fullness of Christ himself. It's had no greater impact than what it's going to have in these days that we're living in now. So I encourage you to get into the Word, stay with our program as we go forward. I thank you so much for your faithfulness in coming to see us this program, and we welcome you back at our next showing. I'm Wally Wood for the Revelation File.
You have been watching the Revelation File Report with Wally Wood, a Wally Wood Ministries production from Houston, Texas. You are able to support the ministry by donating at wallywoodministries.com and by mail at Wally Wood Ministries, P.O. Box 42005, Houston, Texas 77242. Wally is available to present full 2-hour forums in your city called the Revelation File News Forum. For more details, contact Andy Valadez at 713-560-3348 or by email at andy@andyvaladez.com. The Revelation File News Report is a weekly update of global trends in the news as it aligns with end-time Bible prophecy. Tune in again next time and be sure to like and share this channel.